Okay, so that was us creating our first class, our first C# script, and it just printed out this debug statement. It was using the start and the update method. Now I'm going to jump over to our last script that we need to look at this week. And let me first talk about that. There's the idea of a class, something we're writing once and we can reuse many, many times over as multiple objects at runtime. This right here is our script now copied into memory and running in our app, one object of it, but you can have more. So this is a component object. It is an object in the sense of object-oriented programming, an object meaning a section of code, usually a class, copied and reused. But these two scene objects, you can also think of them as they're just code objects in the sense of object-oriented programming. And a scene too. It's just they're encapsulated with each other. They're focusing on different things. So since this is a component object, I can remove and add components as I care to since we're not active. The app isn't running. So I'm done with this functionality. It served its purpose. I'm going to remove it. Now, this unit click script is what I'm going to cover. So I'm just going to put it onto the sphere. And notice when I go to the cube, there's nothing there, but I can drag it on there too. Now we have two objects of this new script, like live in our app. One sitting on this cube game object, one sitting on this sphere game object. And actually, before I go into the details of the code, let me just click play. And I think it's a good lesson on what objects are in object-oriented programming. So if I click on the cube, notice I get a statement. Cube was clicked with this world position. And if I go to cube, that's the game object's name. And this is the transform's position of that object. We printed it all out. And if I click on the sphere and click over on the sphere in the inspector, notice we get a different printout. Different game object name, different world position. We have two objects of this unit click class live in our app. That's the benefit of writing a class. You can reuse it many times. So let's take a look at this class. So for right now, just ignore that. Now we have our using statements. These are namespaces we're bringing in. Notice only the Unity engine namespace is being used. I'm recording. Awesome. And now we have this new method. And it's OnMouseDown. This also is coming from Unity engine. This is encapsulating a lot of functionality that's hidden away and is just meant to make things simple for you to start with. So private void OnMouseDown. So if you do create another class and call it unit click, it's okay if you have like a start and an update method in it and they're empty, they're not doing anything. You could just write this. And then we're going to have this long code in here. So let me just break it up because it's running all the way. You can like press the enter key. And even though this looks like 2 lines of code, because this line didn't end with a semicolon and it's like continuing here, there's actually just 1 line of code. It was just broken up over 2 lines. So what's happening here? OnMouseDown is called when the user has pressed the mouse button while over a GUI element or a collider. So if I go back to this cube in this sphere, I see. Okay. Remember I told you that there was a box collider on the cube and a sphere collider on the sphere. So they do have collider objects. And that's why when I click on them, this was working. So any of these primitives created come along with a collider, which is going to be very beneficial for when we're trying to figure out if we're clicking on them. So this is saying we're going to print whenever the user clicks on whenever this class is made a component object of whatever scene object. And if that scene object has a collider, then this bit of code will run when the user clicks on it. So we're going to print out to the console, and we're going to print out a big statement. So what's going on with this statement? So we have this variable plus this string constant, or this hard-coded string, plus this variable. So if I hover over, when you look at like what this is, you go all the way to the right-hand side, and you see it, oh, this is a string, whatever it evaluates to. A string plus a string is called string concatenation. It just takes the two strings and adds them together and builds a longer string from them. And then we're going to add together, and it looks like whatever this thing is, it's a vector3, whatever that is. And it looks like ultimately that vector3, we're calling its toString method. So every object secretly, like shown to you or not shown to you, has a toString method, because it's very useful to print stuff out two strings, text, to read what this thing is holding. So even though this object is not a string, we call its toString method, and the developer somehow wrote some logic to be like, well, I want, to convert whatever is within this object into strings. So this all concatenates together into one big string. So let's look at this first thing. This dot game object dot name. So this is a very important keyword. It is called a self-reference. It's saying whichever object is calling this method, go to it, use its dot operator, go to one of its member properties or methods. In this case, it's saying go to its game object property, which is an object, and then go within there and go get me its name, the member property type name, called name, which is of type string. So what this is saying is, if I clicked on the sphere has this component object, and if I click on it, and that debug statement is called, that line of code is called, and it's saying this, go to this object, which is this instance of unit click. Remember, we have two, we have many, we have hundreds, thousands. How do you differentiate between all those copied instances of the unit click class? Well, this keyword is what says, well, this copy, this object here, go up to its game object, its higher level, its metadata, one level up. Go get the name, which is this right here, sphere. That's why when we clicked on it, it said sphere or cube, because depending on if we clicked on in this code and this one was run, or if the code in this one was run, it goes up. It says, hey, go get your game object's name. Go use the dot operator, go to your game object, use the dot operator, go into its name, which is a string. So this part evaluates to either sphere or cube, or whatever I have it connected to. And then add it to this string, and then go here, which is go to this object, this instance, and go to its game object, and go to its transform component, then go into that transform component's property, which is of type vector3, called the position, call its toString method. So it's saying, here we are, go up to the game object level, which knows about all of its components, go into this transform component, and notice that the position is an X, a Y, and a Z. 3 floats to figure out the position. So a vector3 is a special class. We use it a lot. And it encapsulates this idea of 3 floats. A vector is just a series of floats. You can have a vector2, a vector3, a vector4. This is a vector3, 3 floats. And then since these are numbers, these are not strings, how do we print out what they are? Or call the toString method, and somebody already wrote that. And then it just takes those 3 numbers and makes them all nice. It just gives them 2 decimal places. It puts them in a nice parentheses, put some commas between them. So that's why it says cube was clicked, and this is its world position. Sphere was clicked. So it's very important to understand the this keyword, this object, this instance of the class. The class is sitting on the file drive. It's not in your app. The copies of it, the objects of it are. And that's what this is referring to. All right, and just a little precursor. I'm going to take this return statement out because it makes the update do nothing. Next section, we're going to be really breaking that up. A lot has been sugar-coated for you. What this OnMouse is doing is it's like having an update loop, constantly checking, is there user input? If there's user input, let's shoot a ray out from the mouse position through the camera into the virtual space. Let's create this hit object. Let's use the physics system to shoot that ray out. Here's its input parameters. And if we do hit something, we are going to debug out the name. I'm going to cover this next class. But input is a class. It's a big one. Get key down is saying like, hey, I'm going to pass you a key. In this case, I got to talk about what this means. But it's converted to the left mouse click. And down just means right when you click. Get key means like auto fire while you're holding it. Get key up means when you release it. So this only becomes true when you first press the mouse button. It's like saying false, 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 true. And then like false, 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 the user presses it, true. So it's like constantly checking for user input. And if it does, it's saying, hey, shoot a ray out. Let's see if we touch something. Oh, it was a sphere or cube. But we'll go into this in more detail. You're only getting to here. So this is very important to understand. It's referencing the object because you have multiple objects of a class running in your app. All right, and I think that's it. Yeah. Cool. Let me know if you have any questions.